Well, we're finally back live on the Hard Starboard Radio Network. blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. I am your host, Jasmius. Off a demoralizing, is that a good word for it? Week dealing with my dear old dad's frankly deteriorating physical condition, but not in a life-threatening sense. He is getting weaker and weaker, but it's like, see, his vital signs are perfectly normal. Pulse, I think, I took him to his Medicare wellness checkup last Friday, and oh, golly gumdrops. I mean, his pulse, 73. Blood pressure, like 110/70. I mean, his oxygen level, 94%, I think. I mean, his vitals are just fine. It's just he is weak, and he's getting weaker all the time. It's almost, when you look at him, it almost looks like he's crumpling into himself. And yet, his vitals are normal. His mind is just fine, and you know, it's the classic case of being trapped in your own body, is what it amounts to. I mean, he can't stand, he can barely sit up, although he was doing a little bit better job of it yesterday evening at dinner. But he's been confined to bed, and now the assisted living facility is trying to get him into rehab so he can maybe get back to the point where he's able to live in assisted living, because if he can't get back to where he was a week ago, then he's got to go to a nursing home. And nursing homes are more expensive than assisted living. But, you know, that's what happened. That's how last week ended up. It started out right after last Monday's podcast with a phone call from the hospital indicating, oh, well, your dad's in the emergency room here and he's ready for pickup. Oh, I didn't know he'd even been sent to the emergency room. Ooh. Okay, and then it just kind of went. And then, I don't remember if, no, I didn't. No, I didn't have a chance to mention any. Well, I mentioned it on Saturday, on the Saturday afternoon radio extravaganza, American Daily Review, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific Saturdays, last Saturday's episode, the opening monologue. So it's all there. But you know, a yeast infection, in pain for a week, weakened him, didn't sleep well, catheter leaking, had to go to the emergency room and the doctor's office on 3 consecutive days, and then 4 out of 5 days last week. So that was a lot of getting out, a lot of getting into and out of vehicles and into and out of his wheelchair, and just all kinds of things going on. Not the kind of active week you want to have, especially when you're 82 years old. And, of course, now trying to get him into rehab so that he can kind of get back to where he was a week ago, to where he can still live in assisted living. Otherwise, nursing home bound will he be, and that means probably the forfeiture of what most of his remaining furniture and stuff, assets, possessions. No, not so much assets. Possessions is a better word. So I'm dealing with that all last week and through the weekend as well, and I'm still dealing with it. I got a phone call regarding his Veterans Aid and Attendance Pension application that I sent off the forms for, and I got a call back like 3 minutes before airtime saying, well, could you give me a call back? Well, I can't give you a call back now. I sent him an email. Hopefully he'll give me the details that he was referring to. He said there were 2 items that needed addressing, so hopefully he'll put that in an email and fire it back to me. If after the program today is too late, then we'll just have to touch base first thing tomorrow morning. Just like I was supposed to hear from assisted living facility about what they were able to put together as far as getting my dad into rehab or into the hospital and then into rehab and what have you, and haven't heard from them all day, which tells me they haven't been able to get a hold of his primary care physician. I tell you what, man, having an elderly parent in this kind of situation where they're living and they still have all their marbles, but their bodies have otherwise quit, is not an enviable position to be in. But, I mean, I suppose it was always coming. I just didn't quite know it was coming like this. But I'm an only child. I don't have any siblings. Nobody else to pass or deal this off to. So I'm it. So I deal with it. Oh, so that was last week. But here, at least for today, we are here on the Hard Starboard Radio Network at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. Guest call-in number 646-478-5068. Email address jazzmedia@comcast.net. Your source for all but the approximately last 4 months, I think that's right, yeah, of podcasts through the miracle of digital audio, past podcasts of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. Send your requests to jazzmedia@comcast.net, JASMIUS at COMCAST.net, and specify the dates, and make sure you have an email inbox that is large enough to accommodate an attachment of approximately 40 megabytes. And then you'll be golden, and I can get it to you. And again, specify the dates, because if you use any other criteria, I'm not going to know what you're talking about. Because I'm not going to go back and listen to 200 plus podcasts to try to figure out which one you're looking for. Just specify the date. It's much easier that way. Trust me. And, of course, if you order all of them, well, that might take a while. So you just be aware of that. But at any rate, you got to do your part. Your inbox has to be big enough to receive it. Otherwise, it'll bounce back to me, and then you'll send me an angry email saying, "Oh, I ordered these podcasts, they never showed up." Well, what email service do you use? Well, I use Gmail, or I use Hotmail, or I use Yahoo. Well, there's your problem. Don't use free email, because you get what you pay for. Now, that doesn't even take into account getting hacked. So, anyway. And, of course, every podcast of this program available right where you are right now, live or on the podcast, blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. Our 9-year anniversary is coming up next week, folks. 9 years on Blog Talk Radio, so that's pretty cool. 7 years for American Daily Review, coming up on July the 9th. blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. All podcasts of that program available at that universal resource locator. And we're about halfway between. In fact, we're almost exactly halfway between Captain America 3: Civil War and X-Men 6: Apocalypse. Which from what I am reading, X-Men 6: Apocalypse is not generally considered to be in Captain America 3: Civil War's league. I don't know. I'm going to go see it, so I'll judge for myself and post the review dutifully at politicalpistachio.com 2 weeks from yesterday. And you don't know what I think about that. I'm not going to prejudge it. I mean, it's X-Men, so I'm going to... It's kind of the third installment in the current younger X-Men trilogy. X-Men First Class, and then X-Men Days of Future Past, and now X-Men Apocalypse. So we'll see how that shakes out. But I'm looking forward to it. I haven't had, from what I've seen of trailers and such, it could be good. I hope Apocalypse doesn't turn out to be too formidable an opponent, because then it just, if you make the bad guy too strong, then you got to come up with some contrived BS to explain how the good guy is taken down, and that's kind of like the first Independence Day. A dime store 90s era computer virus takes down the entire alien computer system. Not really all that likely. So I am gonna. I think I've said before. I am gonna go see Independence Day 2 Resurgence. I may regret that decision, but I'm gonna go see it because I saw the first Independence Day. It didn't. Like I say, it had rather large plot holes in it, but it was still a fun movie. It just depends on how big the plot holes are this time. I can tell you one right off the bat. A distress signal? Really? I mean, the whole point. It was in the dialogue, even. From Bill Pullman's character, President Thomas Whitmore. He said, after the mind meld that the alien forced on him at Area 51, and he said, they're like locusts. They're traveling from planet to planet, their entire civilization. Once they consume every last natural resource, they move on. And we're next. Okay, so their entire civilization is in that one giant thumbtack, if you remember what that thing looked like. But now, they got out a distress signal? A distress signal to whom? Their entire civilization is in that giant thumbtack, right? Take out the giant thumbtack, they're all dead, the day is saved! Except they got a distress signal. Oh boy. So the premise already has a giant hole in it, but I'll probably go see it. Just to see just to confirm my suspicions, or who knows? Maybe they'll come up with an explanation that actually makes kind of, sort of, some little wee bit of sense. So, and if not, well, I'll blast it in my review. You know how that goes. Hey, I wasn't kind to Avengers 2: Age of Ultron last year. I mean, now, I will say this much, that my friend, the director, Douglas V. Gibbs, America's Constitution Authority, he didn't write a review of Captain America 3 Civil War this past weekend, but he did go to see it and summarized what he thought of it, and I disagree. I mean, his biggest objection was that it took so long to set up the Leipzig airport battle. And what ensued from that, my wife fell asleep during the first half of it. Well, I disagree. You had to have all of that to set that up. It started 6 months after maybe 6 months, a year, whatever, after the events of Age of Ultron, and you had to have that long step-by-step build-up in order to make it believable that Cap and Iron Man would end up trying to kill each other. That's not going to happen just like that. It's going to take a while. A number of things have to happen. Frustrations have to build. Anger has to build. I mean, even after Stark lost Rhodey, James Rhodes, War Machine, his best friend, to friendly fire, and he wound up paralyzed. I mean, even then, he was willing to listen to. I mean, remember when he discovered on the way out to that Ocean Max prison that Cap's team, other than Bucky, was imprisoned in? He discovered that, oh, wait a minute, Bucky Barnes didn't, James Buchanan Barnes didn't assassinate. He didn't set off that bomb in Vienna. And so he was willing to go out and say, you know what, I was wrong. New evidence has come to light. So, it had to have all of that build up to get it to that point where Stark, Iron Man, just snaps. It was necessary. You couldn't just have them start trying to kill each other out of nothing. So I'm going to put that comment on that post of Mr. Gibbs's at politicalpistachio.com this evening, if I get the chance. Actually, I would have had the chance for something else earlier this afternoon, if you know what I mean. But I had to go to the library again to repeat something I did yesterday that I was trying to get done yesterday while we were going out for another purpose, and it would have been so seamless and convenient, but no, that couldn't work out. So the time that would have been devoted to something much more pleasant was instead devoted to remedial BS. But such is my life. That's just the way things are. The updating of our YouTube channels, youtube.com/HeartStarboardRadio, youtube.com/American Daily Review 2 is still ongoing, but the light is returning. I'm returning to within range of the light at the end of the tunnel, so that's a good thing. Not updated yet, but I'm still working on it. And, of course, this is Monday. We've had a whole weekend worth of stuff in the stack. So, why wait any longer? Let's get started. I'll tell you what, Gina McCarthy, the Oberfuhrer of the Environmental Pollution Agency, she really needs to not wear any tops that don't extend above her collarbones. Because, good Lord, so much waddle, so much chin waddle, neck waddle. I mean, a neck that looks like a street map of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's just nasty. Well, first item in the stack, EPA's war on methane and defiance of settled science takes effect. This has been a long time coming, a really long time. I don't know what they were waiting for. Here's what I wrote about it 9 months ago, last August. politicalpistachio.com. Quote, look at how methane emissions over the past 6 years have plummeted at the same time. What the hell? What did I just do here? It's still on the air, but I don't know what happened on the screen here. Sheesh. And now I have... I don't know what in the world is going on. Hold on, let me... Are you kidding me with this? All right, here's a technical. Oh, here it goes. Here. I don't know what the hell that was all about. I don't know what just happened, but I lost my screen and. All right, well. Here's some. No, I gotta scroll up to the top of the screen for this. All right, amuse yourselves for a few minutes while I try to deal with this technical problem on the fly. All right, let's try this again. Now look at how methane emissions. Oh, is that what that is? Well, I don't want to close that, but I might have to. All right, that was weird. Now, apparently my screensaver was about to activate, but it got gummed up somehow. Again, very strange. All right, take 3. Look at how methane emissions over the past 6 years have plummeted at the same time that natural gas production has soared. To listen to the green extremists, you'd think this phenomenon was impossible, inconceivable. Big oil equals rampant pollution is what we've been indoctrinated to believe for longer than my entire adult life. How can such a counterintuition possibly be the case? Simple. Methane is natural gas. And since natural gas is what the energy industry is attempting to extract, so that yes, they can sell it and yes, make a profit on it, guess what? They have an acute economic incentive to make sure that they allow as little bit as possible to bleed off and escape as methane emissions. A self-correcting problem that ought not require any regulatory reinforcement, even if the EPA was legal and constitutional. Right? Yeah, damn right. But the EPA is blitzing the energy industry with regulations anyway because bleep you. That was 9 months ago. Now, the EPA actually proposed these Dunsel-esque anti-natural gas regulations last October. And now, after most of a year has passed, they finally shoved them down our throats. This quote's from the Intelligencer.net. Because the U.S. Environmental Pollution Agency believes methane, the main component of natural gas, it is natural gas, can be 25 times worse for the atmosphere than carbon dioxide, officials Thursday mandated that drillers, processors, and pipeliners curb emissions of it by 45%. Despite the already proven and entirely logical inverse relationship between natural gas production and atmospheric methane emissions. These methane standards are even stronger than EPA Oberfuhrer Gina McCarthy proposed last August. After reviewing more than 900,000 comments, the final plans call for cutting methane emissions by 510,000 tons by 2025. The August plan called for trimming pollution by 400,000 tons by that year. The true objective not being reduction in methane emissions, which have already been falling due to producers' free market motive to maximize the usable and extractable quantity of it, but to eliminate natural gas extraction and production altogether, even though natural gas is by far the cleanest burning fossil fuel there is, and the United States possesses centuries' worth of it. West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association Executive Director Corky DeMarco said the new regulation will force operators to shut down some wells that are only marginally productive. This is yet another attack by this administration on fossil fuels. We are so blessed in this country to have the resources we have, but they are not letting us reach our potential, he said. With the monitoring equipment they are going to require, it won't make sense to run some of these wells. They will be shut down. End of quote. Which is, of course, the whole point. Hydraulic fracturing is the source of one of the Obama regime's greatest failures. Their inability to destroy the U.S. domestic energy market and skyrocket electricity rates, pump prices, and the like. Technology and greater ease of extraction afforded by fracking has reduced natural gas prices by a factor of 4 in recent years, generating the domestic fossil fuel energy boom that has been the lone economic palliative during the ongoing Obama economic depression. Amazingly, the market has actually outsmarted and even overwhelmed the Obama EPA, which has been unable to slow it down or discredit the, yes, settled science underscoring its comparative environmental benefits. So, in the allegedly waning days of the Obamadency, they're simply abandoning any pretense of objectivity or reasonableness or sanity and are plainly and simply declaring war on the only part of the U.S. economy that has managed, despite the regime's best efforts, to succeed. Because the poor and working and middle classes must be broken by runaway energy bills and yoked to sunbeams and windmills, no matter what it takes. To edit a phrase, ladies and gentlemen, the lights are to go out all over America. Even before they do in Venezuela, as a matter of fact. Gotta keep up with the Maduros, after all. It seems more appropriate for today, for some reason. Well, Donald Trump has picked up the coveted Vladimir Putin endorsement. Not really surprising. 2.5 years ago, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is reputed to have said the following about Barack Obama. Quote, "Negotiating with Obama is like playing chess with a pigeon. The pigeon knocks over all the pieces, shits on the board, and then struts around like it won the game." Close quote. Whether Tsar Vlad actually said that, and he did publicly crack last fall that Barack Obama has, and I quote, mush for brains, so I have no reason to believe that the earlier quote isn't genuine as well. But the fact is that Putin has effortlessly played Red Berry like a 10-cent kazoo for the past near decade, solidifying Russia's re-hegemonizing of the Caucasus region, reconquest of the Crimean Peninsula, and eastern Ukraine, regaining of strategic nuclear and conventional military superiority over NATO, and global supremacy over the United States via Moscow's alliance with Red China. This was made effortless by what is Obama's greatest vulnerability and character flaw: the disastrous combination of his woeful ignorance and stupendous narcissism. Compared to Donald Trump, King Hussein may be Henry Kissinger, which likely explains Putin's ecstatic reaction to and approval of Trump's ascension to the presumptive Republican presidential nomination. The quote comes to us from Newsmax. Russian President Vladimir Putin is pleased with Donald Trump's successful campaign and rise to become the Republican Party's presumptive presidential nominee, but veteran U.S. diplomats are not so sure if his call to improve relations with the communist leader is such a good idea. There's a mythology about foreign policy that is just like deal-making in the business world, and if you don't like the deal, you can just walk away. Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia under Obama and a vocal Trump critic, told the Wall Street Journal, in foreign policy, you can't walk away. It can come back to bite you. It can create vacuums. Hold on a second. I'm going to italicize. Oh, I'm going to fix that too. Italicize one other thing here, and we are golden. But in December, while Putin was praising Trump in a gesture that raised eyebrows in the United States and worldwide, Putin said that the New Yorker says he wants to move to another level of relations, to closer and deeper relations with Russia. How can we not welcome that? Of course we welcome it. Well, sure he does. Because he could and would fleece the Donald even easier than he has Obama, simply by dint of appealing to his vanity. Vlad at least had to wait. I mean, he at least had to wade through the Barack Obama's Sheldon Cooper-esque faculty lounge lizard foolishness on the way to extracting what he wanted from him. But Trump's tissue-deep shallowness, gaping ignorance, stunningly easy manipulability, and roaringly overrated self-regard have got to be making the Russian strongman wonder how he managed to stumble onto this continent-sized field of four-leaf clovers. What we have now in the dynamics between Putin and Obama is very unhelpful. Dmitry Simes, president of the Center for the National Interest, which hosted Trump's foreign policy last month, told the Wall Street Journal. Obama clearly does not trust Putin, does not like Putin, and doesn't hide it, said Simes, or Simes, however he pronounces it. I think that Putin doesn't like Obama, is not afraid of Obama, and doesn't particularly respect Obama. Well, you got that right, buddy. I mean, that part we already knew. But what's wrong with the first part? Obama doesn't trust Putin, he doesn't like Putin, doesn't hide it. What's wrong with that? I mean, no president of the United States should like or trust Putin, nor should that dislike or distrust be hidden. Now, Obama, of course, bears those feelings out of wounded ego and resulting butthurt, rather than any strategic insight or acumen, though the Obama regime's quiet rebuilding of the Bush 43 era anti-ICBM shield in Eastern Europe is a sign that he might genuinely have learned something over the past 8 years, which is more than can be said for Trump's self-educative abilities. Meanwhile, Trump has used the tension between Obama and Putin on the campaign trail, telling Fox News after Russian warplanes and a helicopter buzzed 11 times. They made 11 passes at the USS Donald Blake. Buzzed a U.S. Navy destroyer in the Baltic Sea, the aforementioned USS Donald Blake, that Putin was tweaking us. If it were me, I'll tell you, I would call him and I would say, don't do it. Just stop it. Don't do it. And when he did it again, then what? I mean, Putin knows we don't have the means or willingness to back up such a warning, just as he has no more respect for or fear of Trump than he does Obama. Is the Donald even capable of realizing that it might be a lot more complicated than don't do it? I'll let you ponder that for a moment. It really really is not a complicated question, but would say a lot more capable. Of course he isn't. He's not. Of course he's not capable of realizing that it might be a lot more complicated than don't do it. Like all strutting narcissists, Trump has the stratospheric self-conceit that convinces himself that he, and he alone, has the unique ability to see into other people's souls and charm and bend them to his will. Russia, said Trump, will respect us. And I've had a sort of a semi-nice relationship with Putin. But why will they respect us? I mean, again, is Trump aware that international respect comes from actions, not semi-nice relationships? And that Obama has so hopelessly squandered U.S. deterrent credibility and prestige that there's no practical way to get it back? Short of going to war, a war we would lose. And that such a situation calls for firm, steadfast, steady, philosophically informed and reinforced leadership, not flights of egotistical fancy? Again, no. I believe in easing of tensions and improved relations with Russia from a position of strength only is possible. Absolutely possible, Trump said at his foreign policy speech in April. Some say the Russians won't be reasonable. I intend to find out. And get stripped naked in the process. Why isn't easing of tensions and improved relations with Russia possible or even desirable under the present circumstances? Putin has the upper hand. An easing of tensions in that scenario, i.e. not a position of strength, would mean more appeasement and capitulation, i.e. great deals, which is what makes I intend to find out so ominous a statement. And how would a President Trump react to getting double-crossed and humiliated by Putin? I think we have a pretty good idea. Some combination of impotent Trumper tantruming, compounding our national embarrassment, and an impulsive desire for revenge that could be, shall we say, dangerously destabilizing. It's all part of the insurmountable trust deficit that will keep Il Duce out of the White House. If he and Vlad are to have a semi-nice relationship, well, the pic that I posted at politicalpistachio.com Saturday will be its only tangible manifestation. Okay. Just to segue, to give you fresh evidence and examples of how we don't have a military that can compete on the world stage anymore. Let's take a look at Obama's Air Farce for a minute. I'm looking at a picture of the boneyard in the Arizona Sonoran Desert. It's where the Air Force sends, basically, it's where they send their decommissioned military aircraft, everything from bombers to transport planes to fighters to bombers, attack aircraft, what have you, interceptors. They're all there. They're all being harvested for parts or otherwise. Well, they sent them to that location because they'll rot a lot slower than they would in, say, I don't know, the Olympic Peninsula of Washington, or like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. That would be a real good place to send them. I tell you, this picture is rather eerily and depressingly symbolic of the entire U.S. military and the entire United States itself, come to think of it. Now, remember a few months back when Air Force Commissar Deborah James told Congress the following, quote, Also speaking at the hearing about the fiscal 2017 budget request for the military, Air Force Commissar Deborah James said half of her combat forces were not sufficiently ready for fighting against a country like Russia. Money is helpful for readiness, but freeing up the time of our people to go and do this training is equally important, James said. Earlier this month, Air Force officials said they were facing a shortage of more than 500 fighter pilots, a gap expected to widen to more than 800 by 2022. Close quote. Now consider the following, ladies and gentlemen, a revision and extension of her remarks. Quote comes to us from Newsmax. Draconian budget cuts on the nation's military by the Obama administration have taken such a toll that the United States Air Force needs 4,000 service personnel to maintain its aircraft, 700 pilots to fly them, and members are now foraging for parts in a desert site called the Boneyard, which I described earlier. In essence, a military aircraft cemetery where permanently decommissioned planes are sent in Arizona because the Obamagon, cannot afford to destroy them. It's not only the personnel that are tired, it's the aircraft that are tired as well. Master Sergeant Bruce Frommer, who has worked on B-1 Lancer bombers for more than 20 years, told Fox News. Frommer is stationed at Ellsworth Air Force Base, located about 35 miles from Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. He told Fox that only about half of the 28th Bomb Wing's fleet of bombers could fly. We have only 20 aircraft assigned to the station currently, he said. Out of those 20, only 9 are flyable. The B-1 I worked on 20 years ago had 1,000 flight hours on it, he added. Now we're looking at some of the airplanes out here that are pushing over 10,000 flight hours. Close quote. And the dismal, dangerous litany goes on, folks. Captain Elizabeth Jarding, a Lancer pilot out of Ellsworth, says that bomber crew training time and resources have been cut in half over Obama's 2 terms. The Air Force has pink-slipped countless irreplaceable skilled personnel whose replacements, even if there were any, would take a long time to train for their jobs, and the Air Force has cut way back on all training, remember? And those few that have stuck it out, perhaps thinking like many of us did that there's no way Obama could possibly be reelected 4 years ago, are worn down, demoralized, burnt out, and frankly, without hope. When I first came in 7 years ago, we had 6 people per aircraft, and the lowest man had 6 or 7 years of experience, Miller added. Today, you have 3-man teams, and each averages only 3 years of experience. Added Captain Jarding, honestly, from the perspective of an aircrew member, the squadron is wiped out. And that's before any combat has begun, folks. Now intersect this story with 2 others we've been tracking. First, the fact that air power is about the only area in which the United States has appeared to retain even a slight military advantage over the Sino-Russian axis. But if only half of our aircraft are flyable at any given time, then we effectively become outnumbered by the Russians and Chinese almost 2-to-1. And they have better, more modern, and better maintained fighters and bombers. And qualitative superiority is a multiplying factor of quantitative advantage. And 2, Vladimir Putin does not respect us, does not fear us, and by this time fully expects to conquer us. It's, yeah, like I just said in the previous item in the stack. So, I mean, how would President Trump react to getting double-crossed and humiliated by Putin? Again, I think we have a pretty good idea. Some combination of impotent Trumper tantruming, compounding our national embarrassment, and an impulsive desire for revenge that could be, shall we say, dangerously destabilizing to us, because we would and do not have the means to back it up. As Fandral said to Odin after the Dark Elf attack on Asgard in Thor 2, The Dark World, "My king, we are all but defenseless." Precisely the sort of situation that calls for firm, steadfast, steady, philosophically informed, and reinforced leadership. Not a volatile, witless oaf like Donald Trump. The terminally frightening part, ladies and gentlemen, is that there really are no better options. Hillary Clinton will continue the slow American decline until we collapse or are conquered. Trump would get us decimated all at once in a fit of wounded ego and braggadocious bluster. Or as Volstagg said after being summoned by Heimdall in the first Thor movie, we're doomed. Enjoy the rest of your week, assuming we live through it. Okay, now let's take a little look at another in a long series known as Trumpocrisy. Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care what. See, here's what you Trumplicans have to understand. Dallas Williams, I was speaking particularly to you. And you're happy about this. I know. You've already said it on my Facebook feed. Comments I keep deleting until you get the message. That there's no there for me to engage. You're just a mindless, drooling idiot. I feel like, with people like that, people like Dallas Williams, I feel like General Zod in Superman 2. Is there nobody on this planet to even challenge me? In all honesty, I've only encountered the number of people, of online opponents, debate opponents that have been in my league. I can count on one finger. Or excuse me, one hand. One hand. I'll name him. David Woodbury. Jim Edmonds, I think his name was. It started with an E. I know that much. Andrew, I can never remember his last name. Not that any of you would recognize it anyway. Those are all people from the original CompuServe Information Service political debate boards. I'm not sure if I'd count Robert Schmidt in that category as well. He was more of an asshole. More of a baiter or a troll. So there just have not been that many that can actually hang with me in online debate. And Dallas Williams is not in that category. Let's just establish that here and for all time. But I, as I have said, and I said this a week ago, not this past Saturday, but the previous Saturday on Constitution Radio. I'm fully aware. I understand the centrifugal pull of partisan tribalism. I get it. I didn't enter into never Trump or what I call none of the above now, because that's really that's a more comprehensive definition. None of the above. As opposed to never Trump. Well, that means you're for Hillary. Well, never Hillary. Well, that means you're for Trump. No, none of the above. I am none of the above. I will not vote for Hillary Clinton. I will not vote for Donald Trump. I don't want any part of either one of them. Now, Trump won the Republican nomination, and so he's going to be the nominee, and I get the centrifugal pull of partisan tribalism. There are a lot of people who you would have thought would have been steadfast, never Trumpers to the end, are falling in line. I get that. I've always gotten that. That's just the way these things work. But that doesn't mean that I need the security of numbers. I mean, it's like I've said before, like I've quoted before. Remember when Ronald Reagan, late 50s, early 60s, said, "I didn't leave the Democrat Party, the Democrat Party left me"? Well, same thing now. The Republican Party, I didn't leave the Republican Party, the Republican Party left me. And that's the way it is, and so I'm an independent, conservative independent. And so, so that's why, in turn, it's a unique perspective. Not having this is the first presidential election of my lifetime in which I did not have a dog in the race, so to speak, or a horse in the race. Pick your animal. But I'm not going to stop going after Trump, and I'm not going to stop going after Hillary Clinton, and I'm not going to stop calling it as I see it. Trumpocrisy. Now, what am I talking about? Well, remember this Trump tweet from last fall when he said, and I quote, "Sheldon Adelson is looking to give big dollars to Marco Rubio because he feels he can mold him into his perfect little puppet. I agree!" That was October 13th of last year. Way back when Trump was going to self-fund his campaign. Remember that? Good times, good times. Trump was rich. Trump was successful. Trump wasn't going to sell out to the special interests because nobody controls Trump. So does that make this story a thing? Because it really, really should. Quotes from MSN.com. Billionaire Republican donor Sheldon Adelson is reportedly willing to give Donald Trump as much as $100 million for his presidential campaign, a purported record-setting amount for the wealthy casino magnate. Adelson pledged the amount to Trump, the presumptive GOP presidential nominee, during a meeting last week in New York. Two GOP sources told the New York Times, which first reported the story. Close quote. So Sheldon Adelson is looking to give big dollars to Trump because he feels he can mold him into his perfect little puppet. Right, Trumplicans? Or maybe the molding is flowing in the opposite direction from the mountains of casino cash. This quote's from the New York Times. As significant, Mr. Adelson, a billionaire based in Las Vegas, has decided that he will significantly scale back his giving to congressional Republicans and direct most of his contributions to groups dedicated to Trump's campaign. The two Republicans familiar with Adelson's plan spoke anonymously because they were not authorized to discuss the matter publicly. Close quote. So, guarantee that no matter who wins in November, the Democrats will effectively retain the White House and maximize the chances of the Democrats retaking Congress as well, all in one fell swoop. In the words of Montgomery Burns, excellent. Caleb Howe at Red State sums it up. Quote, Trump's drawing this huge money to himself and away from down-ticket races, potentially losing Congress, and the other selling point, that laughable notion that he would be more supportive of Republican legislation than Hillary would. So he's undermining both the he's better than Hillary settlers and the rabid fan base. Neato. Close quote. Boy, this bargain is getting more corrupt all the time, isn't it? In fact, this may be a bigger Democrat coup than even the 2008 Democrat financial logic bomb that made the Obama ascension inevitable. You know how I've warned for several years now that Barack Obama would pull a bookend crisis to exploit to keep himself in power beyond next January 20th? Make himself president for life? You know, it turns out it's taking the form of Trump mania, ensuring a third Obama term through Hillary Clinton. Any of you Trumplicans who are sick to death of me telling you, see, I told you so! There's a very simple, straightforward solution. Admit you were wrong all along. That I was right. And repent of your sins, even now that it's too late. I'm very forgiving. To a certain point. Hour number 2 coming up. And we're back. Hour number 2. Hard Starboard Radio Network. Monday, May the 16th, 2016. And get everything ready to go. I'm just multitasking like crazy here. As I don't appear to have much of a choice. Anyway, oh yeah. Now, of course, as I'm sure many longtime listeners have long since deduced, I am of German ancestry. My dear old dad is full-blooded German. His parents emigrated to this country in the 1920s. And there's quite a bit of German ancestry on my mother's side, although it's probably more English, but that's still Germanic. So I tend to perk up when I see a story about Germany. And of course, we know what's been happening to Germany over the past year. I'll call it, or refer to Deutschland as Germanistan for nothing. And it's funny because there is such a total, utter, and complete disconnect between the people of Germany and their government. I mean, we talked about, well, we would have talked about last week. I discussed it on politicalpistachio.com about how the German people are saying no. You know, get rid of them. Deport them. Germany is, because you got to remember something about most other countries. The United States always has been a melting pot. People come here from all over the world. We're unified by we used to be unified by traditional American values. Imparted, that's a good word, in the founding documents from the founding fathers. And so we're not used to thinking in terms of a monocultural mindset. Well, in Germany, European countries, Germany, France, Britain, etc. You go on down the list. They all have unique cultural, ethnic identities. And like I say, Germany's no different. And so, in other words, saying Germany is for Germans means something else entirely than America is for Americans. Germany is ethnically German. That's really what it means. You can't emigrate to Germany and become a German the way you can emigrate to the United States and become an American. That's really what it amounts to. Well, so the German people trying to cope with an influx and invasion of over 1 million Muslims over the past calendar year. It's not working. They have become the victims of this influx, this cultural and physical invasion. It's not all that passive. I mean, it's not armed in the sense of an army rolling across the border, but It's not too far short of that in terms of its effects. The roving rape gangs, we talked about it on this program over the past few months, and I've written about it at politicalpistachio.com. So has Mr. Gibb. And so the German people don't want it. The German people don't want the muzzies, so to speak. They say, get rid of them. We can't take any more. Stop. Help! I mean, 3 German state elections back in March. The ruling Christian Democrat coalition of Chancellor Angela Merkel lost 2 out of those 3 state election races for just this reason. You know, she for whatever insane, crazy, just mind-numbing, mind-boggling reason that she insists on inflicting the enemy on her own country. It is insane. It is crazy, but they just won't stop. And here's another example of it. German authorities are teaching Muslims to practice safe rape. I don't know any other way to describe it. I mean, think of this. Roving Muslim rape gangs. You know, packs of young Muslim men who are preying upon German women. Why? Because, well, she wasn't wearing a hijab. She wasn't wearing a burqa, so she was asking for it. Really? But that's the way they think. That's Muslim culture. Predatory. Comprehensively so. And the solution of the German government is practice safe rape. Pass out condoms. That's basically it. I mean, it's so freaking insane that it's funny, but at the same time it's deadly serious. I mean, if you can follow what I'm trying to tell you here, maybe the story will help illustrate it. Now, I am really seriously running low on viscerally hyperbolic adjectives to describe this demi-sanity. Again, this is from Newsmax. Well, actually, it's from the Washington Post via Newsmax. The German government has created a website dedicated to teaching the influx of Middle East invaders about sex. Literally and figuratively, reports say. So, oh, they need to be taught about sex, huh? They don't seem to be. I mean, they've been taught about sex, Muslim style. Why would they want to learn it? Why would they want to learn about sex, infidel style, from infidels? Anybody bothering to ask this question in Germany? I guess it's that the German authorities don't think that the roving Muslim rape gangs were raping German women the right way, I suppose. You know, something like, holen Sie sich Ihren Schwanz aus meinem Ohr. Which translated means, get your dick out of my ear. Germany's Federal Center for Health Education's $136,000 website uses graphic diagrams. I don't know, I looked it up. Maybe it's just my reduced sensibilities, but they didn't seem all that graphic to me. But then I didn't spend a whole lot of time exploring the entire website to find the titillating parts. It uses graphic diagrams and images to outline everything from first-time sex to how to perform more advanced sexual acts and even how to behave respectfully with homosexuals, the WAPO reports. Because the gay Stapo, not the global jihad, really rules the world. And the Western left is still more perverted than even Muslim men. Although I'm almost shocked that Deutsch officials didn't include training on gender transition. Isn't that tranny-phobic? According to United Press International, the section deals explicitly with young people trying to lose their virginity, suggesting, and I quote, "Make sure that no one can disturb you," and describing the various sensations and emotions people have when losing their virginity. And, I don't think that's what's been going on the streets of Germany over the past near year. I don't think it has much to do with young German women trying to lose their virginity. And it has much more to do with them trying to keep it from being forcibly taken from them. And rather than cutting off the influx and sending them all back where they came from, Muslim men that is, the German government's solution is another rubbers drive. Wunderbar. Not everybody in Deutschland has lost their frickin' minds. Though that really doesn't seem to matter. Freelance artist Michael Bramer tweeted, "What is being done with our money?" Well, you really want to know the answer? The creation and operation of a Muslim version of Match.com, Herr Bramer. "We will give them fertility! We will breed children with them, whether they like it or not!" Because leftists just have to nationalize everything. The European Union, by the by, is pitching in where it can by fiscally punishing any member nation that doesn't accept its fair share of Muslim rape gangs and help them give its own women fertility. This quote comes from barenakedislam.com. The European Commission has proposed a new system for enforcing the relocation of Muslim invaders around the European Union, giving countries that refuse to accept refugees an expensive pay-not-to-play option. First Vice President Hans Timmermans warned, and I quote, "There is no a la carte solidarity in the European Union. You cannot pick and choose when to show solidarity or not." Doesn't sound like a republic, does it? The measure, which would set a price of €250,000 per Muslim, for countries that want to avoid European Union-imposed quotas for the resettlement of asylum seekers, is part of a new raft of proposals aimed at rebooting the European Union's beleaguered strategy for dealing with the migration crisis. Well, you know why they're beleaguered? Because your people don't want it! Your people don't want this to be overrun by marauding Muslims. It is an invasion, and your people don't want it. But, of course, the European Union government or governments don't give a rat's ass what their people want, now do they? I mean, rebooting. I mean, it sounds like more like a blunt reiteration of what created the crisis in the first place. And, oh, by the way, I'm assuming that deporting all those Muslims would cost Germany €250 billion. And that's only about a quarter of the overall total. So, Europe-wide. So what this amounts to is that the eunuchs are literally threatening to bankrupt themselves to ensure the rise of Eurabia. Well, sure. Why should the Germans get to hog all the fun? Or if you want it in German, why should the Deutsch get to schwein all the Spaß? Oh, I love Google Translator. It's awesome. Well, here more on a true political correctness. You know how Donald Trump's totally foobarred the definition of political correctness. He defines political correctness as being polite, not being a jerk. Well, here's another example of real political correctness. Old and busted, the term criminals. The new hotness, justice-involved individuals. Now let's begin this with a quote from George Orwell himself, ladies and gentlemen. Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable. The criminal safe zone at the Obama Commissariat of Injustice, Revenge, and Cover-Up continues to crazily and nauseatingly expand. Because remember, they came out a week, 2 weeks ago, and came up with ridiculous alternative terms for the terms convict and felon. I mean, if they replaced the word convict with the phrase fundamental with the person who committed a crime, and the word felon with individual who was incarcerated. Individual who was incarcerated. Well, you won't believe where it's headed next. The Commissariat of Re-Education, where criminals are getting their special day. Quotes from the New York Post. It's only May, but I think I found the euphemism of the year. According to Team Messiah, criminals should now be declared justice-involved individuals. You know, the neo-Orwellianism comes to us from the bizarre flurry of last-minute diktats, regulations, and bone-chilling threats, collectively known to fanboys as Obama's gorgeous goodbye, assuming he ever says goodbye, and backs it up. In another of those smiley-faced but deeply sinister Dear Colleague letters sent to universities and colleges this week, Obama's re-education commissar, John King, discouraged colleges from asking applicants whether they were convicted criminals, because, of course, why would anybody want to need that little piece of information? An accompanying pamphlet was called Beyond the Box, Increasing Access to Higher Education for Justice-Involved Individuals. Here's a pop question for you. Before this item in the stack, if you had seen or heard the phrase justice-involved individuals, you would have assumed it was a reference to police officers or district attorneys, wouldn't you? Or criminal court judges, right? Individuals involved with carrying out justice, not being the target of it, which makes this Orwellian verbiage at least an order of magnitude more sinister than the dopey DOJ euphemisms. In fact, don't they have to be updated as well? Shouldn't person who committed a crime now be revised to person who committed a justice involvement? How about racist murderer of unarmed black men metaphysical status alterer in place of cop killer? I'd almost guarantee that one is next in the social justice warrior hopper. By the way, why should justice-involved individuals get, or G's, get increased access to higher education? To make them smarter devils? Oh, my apologies. I should have said horned, hooved, red-skinned, fork-tailed, Ron Perlman portrayed non-positive cultural archetypes. So, rapists, burglars, armed robbers, and drug dealers aren't criminals anymore. These folks are simply involved with justice, according to the Obamianists. Hell, that probably describes Obama's entire cabinet by this time. I mean, look who will be serving his third term, for heaven's sake. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. But this is just one aspect of clowered divinization. Hijacking the language is no different than the left's hijacking of every last societal institution, and via Trump mania, now both major political parties. It is an all-out war, ideological, political, physical, and ultimately military, of evil waged upon the good. And the Obama regime is rapidly escalating it, as Kyle Smith, the article of the New York Post piece, goes on to elaborate. Resuming the quote, Obama is fighting the war for criminals to get closer to you and I, you and me, thee and me, on several fronts. Last month, through the Commissariat of Housing and Urban Development, he went after landlords, threatening them with penalties if they barred criminals from living in their buildings. Last November, Obama unilaterally ordered federal agencies to strike the box asking applicants whether they had committed crimes and referred to criminals as folks. This would be the same president who, on October 25, 2010, remember this, referred to Republicans as enemies and suggested voters should punish them. The convicted rapists? They're just folks. This is just a step in a long-term strategy pursued by communists who love criminals the way little girls love Disney princesses. The goal is to sneak criminals into your apartment building or workplace or campus or bathroom or locker room under the guise of transgender rights. It's as I've been saying since November the 6th, 2012, ladies and gentlemen. We have been taken over from within. America has fallen, and there's no getting it back. Boy, I can't wait for the Supreme Court to repeal the Second Amendment next year. Can you? Here's a parting quote from Mr. Smith. When you think about it, Jack the Ripper was merely a cutlery-involved individual, while Jeffrey Dahmer was simply an unconventional dietary options-involved individual. I'm sure you can come up with way more where those came from. It's amazing the number of jobs that have arisen over the past few years that I'm glad I don't have. I used to say that about former House Speaker John Boehner. Didn't envy him his job, no way. Because you're trying to do battle against, at the time, Barack Obama and Harry Reid in front of you while the Tea Party was trying to stab him in the back behind him. Well, the newest job that I'm glad, oh boy, I'm glad I don't have, is that of Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus. This is a glimpse at his life as a freshly, well, what would you call it? Freshly conscripted Trumpoid slave. Now, here's a question I want to start out this item with. How is that? Now, I'm looking at actually, it's the cover of the, March 1990 issue of Playboy magazine, in which it was headlined by a Donald Trump interview. So this is 26 years ago. Donald Trump interview. He's on the cover, and I think that's Barbie Benton. almost wearing something. And she's looking back at him like, oh boy, I can't wait to just drop to my knees and just go to town on Trump Tower, I guess. And Trump's got the same look on his face that he has these days, only, a lot less jowly and a lot less loose skin, but otherwise pretty much the same. In fact, he has a quote of him saying, nice magazine, want to sell it? Now, how is that hugely emblematic picture and the misogyny it represents in any way, shape, or form Hillary Clinton's fault? Well, that's the question you got to ask Reince Priebus after his appearance on ABC's This Week program yesterday. Here's the question he was asked that led to this word salad of an answer. Quote, and finally, I'm sure you've seen the front page of the New York Times today, the story about Trump's relationship with women, talking about unwelcome romantic advances, unending commentary on the female form, a shrewd reliance on ambitious women, and unsettling workplace conduct. Do you have any doubts in your mind about Trump's relationship with women, the way he talks about them? Here was Reince Priebus's answer. Now, parenthetically, picture the position he's put himself in. Trump's the presumptive nominee, and Priebus has, rather than doing the honorable thing and resigning on principle, he has opted to put party before principle, and so now he finds himself in monumentally unenviable, toe-curling to the point of calf cramps positions like this. This is how he tried and failed to field this particular question. Quote, look, I mean, these are things he's going to have to answer for. But I also, so in other words, he's pretty much saying, I'm not even going to try to defend that. But then he and, I'll give him credit. I mean, this is probably, it was a terrible answer, but there was no good answer to this question. There was no good answer to it. The best he could do was, he can't defend Trump, so he tries to turn it into an attack on Hillary Clinton. Which is part of his job, and, it's, I mean, in essence, Priebus is trying to turn chicken crap into chicken salad here. And he failed, but, he did, I suppose, the best that he could. It was still was a failure of an answer. And an embarrassing one. But here's what he said. Look, I mean, these are things he's going to have to answer for. But I also think that these are things from many years ago. And I think that, as Christians, judging each other is problematic. Where did that come from? I think it's when people live in glass houses and throw stones is when people get in trouble. And so, when Hillary Clinton, this is a classic Clinton operation, now suddenly these things are coming out. It's not necessarily that people make mistakes or have regrets or seek forgiveness. Remember when Trump said last September he's never sought forgiveness? You remember that? Yeah, Trump said last September, I've never sought forgiveness. I guess Reince forgot about that particular interview. It's whether or not the person launching the charge is authentic in their own life and can actually be pure enough to make such a charge. That's what I think most people look at when they evaluate people's character. In other words, he's referring to when Jesus told a parable about where bottom line, where the punchline was, worry about the speck of dust in your own eye before plucking the log out of the eye of your brother. And I think that's what he was going for here. But what? I mean, what makes Reince Priebus think that Mrs. Clinton is going after Trump's womanizing from a Christian moral perspective? I mean, remember who Hillary Clinton is. She's a bold dyke feminazi running on her glorious twat, not a Phyllis Schlafly impersonator. Schlafly. And as Democrats, Hillary's husband's womanizing doesn't count anyway. Didn't we learn that lesson 20 years ago or more? While Trump's being an alleged Republican makes his womanizing fair game. That's not the way it should be, but that's the way it is. It's never going to change. I mean, that's how modern politics works, especially at the presidential level. Doesn't Reince Priebus know this? Well, the answer is, of course, yeah, he knows this, but like I say, rather than resign as chairman of the RNC on principle, rather than support Donald Trump, he chose to put party first instead. And now he's got the same haunted, palm frond waiver expression as Chris Christie and Ben Carson and all the other ex-conservatives who have sold their souls to the millionaire slumlord, vaguely aware of the horrible thing he's become and the horrible things he's now having to do. Priebus, that is. And in his case, using his mouth as an industrial-sized pooper scooper and utterly forfeiting any post-Trump credibility he could ever have in his original role as titular party head 6 months from now. Which, in turn, makes him entirely symbolic of the party itself. Which, after it gets decimated this fall, perhaps to 2008 proportions, is not just going to be back out in the political wilderness for the second time in a decade after all the ground it had painstakingly regained over the past 7.5 years, but will have been disemboweled of its conservative identity after the bulk of its leadership so willingly and obsequiously bent the knee to the New York liberal conman. Which, I will say again, as I said in the first hour, I acknowledged, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, the May 7th edition of Constitution Radio, was more or less inevitable. I get that, the centrifugal pull of partisan tribalism. We gotta stop Hillary. Okay, I get that. Not surprised by it. Perfectly willing to stand on my none of the above island by myself. I'm not by myself. National Review, Red State, we're out here. But we're not going to make a difference in 2016. I mean, that ship has sailed. But that doesn't mean that we give up our principles. Amazing how, ultimately, when it came right down to it, my principles meant more to me than a lot of the Tea Partiers who claimed purity was the only standard. It's Pyrrhic fun, but it's fun nonetheless. Something of a vindication, it seems to me. I stayed in the same place, Tea Partiers all over the place. Well, if they weren't drunk before, after drinking the Trump Kool-Aid, they're sure as hell plastered now. Precisely as a Democrat saboteur would also be acutely aware of the partisan, or of the centrifugal force of partisan tribalism. And I still don't envy Reince Priebus his task from now to the fall, even while he deserves every excruciating minute of it for the dishonorable choice that he made. Meanwhile, it is confirmed, ladies and gentlemen, Trump is turning the state of Georgia purple, if not outright blue. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution provides this quote. Trump's 4-point lead over Mrs. Clinton. Ooh. Yeah, it's went for a while without running into this. Not too bad. All right. Anyway, Trump's 4-point lead over Mrs. Clinton, he's at 45%, so 45-41 in this particular poll, is within the poll's margin of error, meaning neither can confidently claim a state that's voted for the GOP nominee since 1996. Sprinkled throughout are reminders of the challenges both face in capturing Georgia, dim voter enthusiasm, high unfavorability ratings, and deep skepticism from voters. Close quote. Well, Mississippi and Utah are also reportedly still toss-ups, which would give the outlie to recent surveys purporting to show Trump as being competitive in swing states like Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, where he's 4, 3, and 7 points behind Mrs. Clinton, respectively, in the RCP average. I guess we'll finally get to see what happens when the resistible force meets the movable object, huh? Okay, little turn to fiscal issues here. U.S. state and local pension funds are drowning in red ink. This is more of an update, since everybody should already be aware of this. You know, even here, even now, it's at times still difficult to remember that we really are broker and more foolish than the rest of the world. Which goes to resoundingly show that continuity of memory is profoundly overrated. This quote is from Forbes.com. U.S. state and local government pensions, which operate under the loosest accounting standards in the public pension world, are not nearly as well funded as most public employee pensions in other developed countries. On an apples-to-apples basis, U.S. public employees or U.S. public employee plans simply set aside substantially less money to fund each dollar of promised benefits than do public employee pensions in other OECD countries. Forbes.com contributor Andrew Biggs explained, when the stakes are this high, last isn't a good place to be. Biggs explained that a 2011 Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development study showed public employee pensions in other countries use more conservative assumptions and more demanding funding requirements than state and local pensions in the United States. The OECD's 2011 study compared government employee retirement plans in 8 countries: the United States, Canada, the Netherlands, Sweden, the United Kingdom, Australia, Norway, and France. But the OECD study performed a second useful task. In addition to merely listing the differences in accounting assumptions used by different countries' public pensions, the OECD authors revalued each pension using consistent standards so that their funding levels could be compared on an apples-to-apples basis, Biggs said. What do these figures mean? They mean that nearly all of the developed countries analyzed by the OECD contribute a lot more to funding public pension liabilities than do U.S. state and local plans. The Dutch, Swedish, and French plans have set aside roughly twice as much money per dollar of promised retirement benefits as have U.S. state and local pensions. Twice as much. Close quote. Money for nothing and chicks for free. Wish casting. The land of make-believe. Caution to the wind. The entitlement mentality. Don't worry. Be happy. There's no such thing as a down market. What could possibly go wrong? How about a cascade collapse of state and local pension funds, effectively already underway, that will pass dozens of institutional tin cups up the bailout line to Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico style? Oh, but wait! The federal government is orders of magnitude broker than all the states and municipalities put together. $19.3 trillion worth, remember? Whatever shall we do? Welcome to Year 8, Obamagon, Year of the One. And if you didn't know where we are on that calendar, I envy you for not having had to live through this depressing nightmare, and do not envy you the shock you must be feeling at waking up to it. This additional factoid may seem contradictory at first, but that's because, well, it is. Also from the Forbes article, almost 20% of Americans 65 and older are now working, according to the latest data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's the most older people with a job since the early 60s, before the U.S. enacted Medicare, according to Bloomberg. Close quote. So this, of course, presupposes that there are actually enough jobs to accommodate that nearly 1 out of every 5 U.S. senior citizens, which seems more than just a bit of a stretch to me. But then I've been saying for well over 20 years that I would never get to retire because Social Security and Medicare would collapse long before I could ever become eligible to belly up to those two troughs. Of course, little did I know that I would be prematurely and involuntarily retired long before either could transpire, despite Red Berry's Herculean efforts at profligacy. Life really can be unpredictable, huh? But only in one direction. Downward. And the U.S. pension cataclysm is eminently predictable and completely inescapable. Yeah, it's a pity I can't afford a passport. All right, now this is your afternoon palate cleanser, ladies and gentlemen. It's headed up by a meme that goes as follows. It's over a picture of a really goofy-looking millennial girl. And the meme, or the caption reads, "I picked a useless college major that'll never let me pay off my student loans. So, like, now I'm totally socialist! Because it's rich people's fault that I'm poor." That's where this is headed, folks. You gotta learn to appreciate gallows humor. That's all I can tell you, folks. You got to learn to appreciate gallows humor. Headline: Men in Literature course canceled. Why? Penises, of course. I mean, it was one English literature course. One little lonely lit course that didn't obsess over and glorify a minority group or vaginas or any other politically favored right tribe entity. One teeny tiny isolated lit course that didn't glorify that also didn't glorify the convex gender, but simply studied its contributions to Western culture. One egregious affront to the left-wing nut academic leviathan that must be purged from existence with extreme, raging prejudice for its unforgivable sins of giving men a voice and, Western culture. From campusreform.org. Springfield College recently canceled a Men in Literature course on the grounds that its inordinate emphasis on the wrong gender creates a hostile environment towards women. Well, I almost don't have to quote any farther, do I? But I will, because ain't no way I'm going to suffer this nonsense by myself. Professor Dennis Goose, G-O-U-W-S, so I'm guessing it's Goose, began teaching the course back in 2005, so 11 years ago, and has offered it several times since then upon the encouragement of his department chair. The course was intended to survey contemporary culture's preoccupation with gender by specifically focusing on the male role in culture. Rush Limbaugh, back when he was a conservative commentator, used to call it illustrating absurdity by being absurd. The only problem I can see with it is that it may have been a better fit for the psychiatry department than English Lit. Now, though, Springfield has determined that Goo's course is unfit to teach after the chair and dean of his department, remember that department head that encouraged him? Well, he had his mind forcibly changed, didn't he? Questioned the content of his syllabus, claiming that Goo's focused too much on the male's societal function rather than his portrayal in literature. In other words, focused too much on reality as opposed to the left-wing redefinition of it. Or put still another way, they started taking progressive fire and immediately capitulated as portrayals in literature, well, they're supposed to reflect the societal function outside of subversive or fundamentally transformative literature, I just referred to a moment ago, which is, of course, the whole point. A distinction without a difference, as it were. Goose agreed to change his syllabus to include more literary texts and fewer gender studies readings. In other words, defeat the purpose of the course that his department chair urged him to undertake. But the university still ultimately decided to cancel the course, informing Goose with a letter from Provost Jean Wild, i.e. a woman with a vagina, presumably, on March 15th. According to the letter, Dean Ann Herzog, in other words, another woman with another vagina, presumably, deemed the proposed revisions to be insufficient, arguing that several of the remaining reading assignments involved materials that relate more to gender studies than to literature. In other words, she cut Professor Goo's academic balls off. Administrators also reviewed the syllabi for 3 other courses taught by Goose, ruling, in other words, they're going to make an example of it, ruling that 2 of them appropriately focus on literature, but raising objections to an essay assignment in his English 113 composition course that asks students to write about how men are treated in their respective academic environments. I think Professor Goose threw that one in as irony bait. I think he was thinking, yeah, well, let's give them something to have fun with here. Let's just see how soon it'll be before they drop the guillotine on this one. Yeah, there you go. That's what it sounds like. That's what I would be doing if I were in his position. You do not afford students the opportunity to choose a gender to write about, nor do you require all students to write about the opposite gender. The letter admonishes him, saying, such is certainly a concern for an academic and from an academic and even legal perspective. Close quote. It was men in literature. Why would he require his students in a men in literature course to write about women? The course wasn't about women in literature. It was about men in literature. In other words, men get nothing. Men suck. All men are misogynists. All men are rapists. They don't deserve to be studied. The only thing that your students should learn about men is what we want them to believe, which bears no relationship to reality. It's such a shock that there is no choice about which gender to write about in a course that focuses on a single gender, which seems to be perfectly fine in women's study courses. Is there a college in the entire country that has a men's study course? And Professor Goose chose the wrong one, the wrong gender. And if he doesn't switch back to only obsessing on women and minorities and homosexuals and gender impersonators and pedophiles and vegisexuals, in other words, 21st century society's ruling elite, then he will be jailed. Because men's studies is sexist, straight studies is homophobic, white studies is the Trump campaign, and how dare you question 58 different genders? At this point, Professor Goose must be seriously questioning his choice of careers. Since I can totally relate to that regret, allow me to provide him with some other English Lit course ideas free of charge. Now that Charlie Brown is dealing with important issues, how about some peanut specials for kids of the 21st century? Chuck and a little red-haired girl find out about unwanted pregnancy in Damn Straight It's Your Baby, Charlie Brown! Check off the safe sex box. See how this works? Is Linus gay? Find out in It's a Different Kind of Love, Charlie Brown. Check out the homosexual box. See how the Peanuts gang deal with date rape in No Means No, Charlie Brown. Check off the feminist box. Discover a father's forbidden love in It's Our Little Secret, Charlie Brown. See, twofer. Buy one, get one free. Check off the incestuous pedophile box. Franklin Speaks. The Peanuts gang gets a lesson in ebonics in I'm a bust a cap in your ass, Charlie Brown. See, check off the minority and the Black Lives Matter box. That's authentic. What goes on in the mind of a serial killer? Discover the inner workings of Pigpen's twisted psyche and meet his murderous alter ego, Mr. Clean, in God Called the Trailer Park and Told Me to Do It, Charlie Brown. See, check off the Demonize Whitey box. Charlie Brown peddles his body for crack money while stealing Social Security checks and boosting automobiles. In Blame It on the Man, Charlie Brown. Check off the Feel the Burn / Occupy Wall Street box. All the millennials who love socialism. And my favorite, Snoopy deals with his shortcomings after being neutered in Why Did You Cut My Balls Off, Charlie Brown? Okay, that one's just wrong. Besides, what would the animal rights people say? And finally, and Marcy and Peppermint Patty explore their sexual feelings for each other in You Mow the Grass and So Do We, Charlie Brown. See, the homosexual blue play special. Oh, and transgenderism. Let me think. How about this? Schroeder yearns to trade places at the toy piano in Please Cut My Balls Off, Charlie Brown. Oh gosh, this is pretty good, man. I hope you appreciate all the trouble I went to on this one. And besides, let's see Dean and Herzog cancel that. Podcast only, hour number 3, coming up right after this. And hour number 3 is here, podcast only. Because there's so much to do at the start of a week. So we don't, not behind all week. You know that expression, the behinder I go, or no, the hurrieder I go, the behinder I get. So that's, you don't want to get in that position if we don't have to be. Hopefully I won't have to be this week. Well, New York's New York's Trumpservative Party is dreamin. It wasn't too long ago they were evenly split between Trump and Ted Cruz, but not anymore. In other words, score one more hostile state-level takeover for the bad guy. To employ a Scott Hall catchphrase from the glory days of the New World Order and World Championship Wrestling. And it's with all the telltale delusionalism that goes along with it. The quote is from Newsmax: "As soon as I fix one thing that needs fixing." One of those things where I'm a little surprised I didn't catch that. The small but influential New York Conservative Party is now poised to give its all-important third line on the Empire State election ballot to Donald Trump, its state chairman revealed to Newsmax on Saturday. "We're overwhelmingly behind Trump," said Conservative State Chairman Mike Long. He added that the endorsement will be officially made in September by the party's 287-member state committee. And there's another typo that I need to fix here. State committee. Yeah, state committee. All right. Although New York last went for a Republican presidential candidate in 1984, there are signs that Trump could actually put its 29 electoral votes in the GOP column. No. Hillary Clinton leads Trump by 22 points in the Real Clear Politics average, so no. Same with this wish casting. Quote, "And our endorsement can be helpful to Trump across the nation," Long told us, noting that Trump is having some trouble with other conservatives nationwide. Having our seal of approval could possibly bring some of those who were undecided onto the Trump train. No. I mean, in the natural centrifugal pull of partisan tribalism, yeah, in that sense. But if he's referring to none of the above / never Trump, no, we're not cheap dates. We're not playing hard to get. You can't get us. You will never get us. I mean, at least, unless Mike Long can regale us with the New York Conservative Party's exploits, is the crucial factor in the elections of President Bob Dole, President John McCain, and President Mitt Romney, all of whom were vastly more conservative and trustworthy than Donald Trump. I mean, seriously, Mr. Long, you and your pals need some serious couch time. Now, that would be time much better spent than what you've just put on your 6-month day timer. The Trump purge is well underway by this time, ladies and gentlemen. Again, it's the same idea. Same idea of the centrifugal pull of partisan tribalism, but also, remember, Trump mania from day one, I said it from day one, is an attempted hostile takeover of the Republican Party by the left, and it has succeeded. It has succeeded. And so now he's doing what you would expect a hostile takeover artist to do. He is purging the conquered party of all those who oppose it. He's either purging or possessing them. Those who were strong and resisting his coercion, he's just throwing them out of the party. And those who are weak are assimilating. Either way, the Republican Party is no longer the party of conservatism, which is what I mean when I say that I didn't leave the Republican Party left me. A constitutional conservative, a Reagan constitutional conservative, charter member, since 1980. So, the purge of conservatives from the former party of conservatism by their perfidious, backstabbing ex-allies who have sold out to and are doing the bidding of the New York liberal con man has hostilely taken it over and made it a wholly owned subsidiary of the Democrat Party, that is. That's way more sophisticated a hose job than the movie version of The Purge. With implications and consequences far longer lasting than a couple of hours at the Cineplex. Go to Red State for the quote. Oh, and by the way, Dallas Williams is no doubt still weeping in sheer orgasmic joy over this. Quote from RedState.com, during the course of the long and contested GOP primary, almost exactly 60% of Republican voters did not vote for Donald Trump. Now, if you remove the New York and, Northeast/Atlantic states, primary states, which have no hope of going Republican in a presidential election ever, are you hearing what I'm saying, Mike Long? Fix one typo here that I should have caught but didn't. All right. If you remove New York and the mid-Atlantic/Northeast primary states, which have, again, you listening, Mike Long, have no hope of going Republican in a presidential election ever, Trump won less than 37% of the vote. Trump's diehard supporters are nowhere near a majority of GOP voters, but they are trying, they've already taken over the party and its apparatus. You see, if and when Trump loses, Trump loses badly in November, the people who work for Trump and who have been paid shills for him have been told repeatedly that they are through in Washington and will never work in politics again. So if you have talked with anyone who has worked with Trump or defended him publicly in any capacity, they have known for a long time that if Trump didn't win, they were done for in politics. Now, the one way they have seen that they can avoid this fate is to take over the party itself. If they take over the state conventions and staff state and national parties with Trump supporters or those who were sympathetic to him, then they can continue making their consultant cash even after Trump goes down in flames in November. At the very least, they're going to try to use Republican hatred of Hillary to get as many Republicans as possible on the record in support of Trump so that they don't look so bad as early adopters of Trumpism. Which is why my friend Doug Gibbs and Alex Ferguson are making such a huge my Constitution Radio on-air colleagues are making such a grievous mistake. None of the above, guys. Trump is as bad as Hillary and arguably even worse. In other words, this is the actual Trump ground game. Because it's not primarily about winning the November election, though if Trump could, that would be icing on the cake for him. It's about disenfranchising the right and totally eradicating the conservative movement as a voice, force, or even relevant, detectable presence in American politics. The political equivalent of a kidnapping, murder, and tossing of the bloody, dismembered remains down an abandoned mine shaft. Something that my friend, again, Douglas V. Gibbs, the director, has noted as the endgame of the left for years, but evidently never imagined would be carried out with this level of misdirection and, again, sophistication, such that he is actually cooperating with it. Use Republican hatred of Hillary to get as many Republicans as possible on the record in support of Trump so that they don't look so bad as early adopters of Trumpism. Is that starting to sound familiar, Doug? Without even more than dimly realizing it. You know, it's much like Colonel Zemo's anti-Avenger strategy in Captain America 3 Civil War. Remember when, at the end, almost the final scene, when Zemo is telling, he's spilling his guts to Black Panther in Siberia. And Zemo said, quote, "I knew I couldn't kill them," referring to the Avengers. "More powerful men than me have tried. But if I could get them to kill each other, well, an empire toppled by its enemies can rise again. But one which crumbles from within, that's dead forever." Now, the latest airport battle unfolded in Nebraska over the weekend. This is from the Omaha, Omagon.com. I forget the nickname of the paper. But anyway, quote, "U.S. Senator Ben Sasse has carved out a name for himself on the national stage as a leader in the Never Trump movement," or none of the above is a better description of it. On the home front, however, the Nebraska freshman senator found himself rebuked Saturday by party loyalists upset at his call for a third candidate to arise and give conservatives such as himself an alternative to Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in the fall election. Delegates of the state Republican convention overwhelmingly passed a resolution opposing Sasse's call for a third candidate. They argued that it would only help Democrats win the White House in November, which, of course, the nomination of Trump is already guaranteed. "If you support a third candidate, you're going to elect Hillary Clinton, and she is going to nominate the next 3 or 4 members of the U.S. Supreme Court," said Pat McPherson, an Omaha Republican. Again, or close quote, again, the Trump nomination itself has already guaranteed that. And even if it hadn't, Trump would make those same nominations himself, which is kind of the point. He'd start with his rabidly pro-abortion sister, who happens to be, I believe, on the U.S. Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Mary Ann Trump Berry, I believe is her name, whom Trump, in this campaign, has said, my sister would make a terrific Supreme Court justice. And I say this as a none of the abover who does not favor a third-party independent conservative candidacy, precisely because it would provide that easy excuse to Trumplicans when their hero goes down in flames on November 8th. I mean, they need to be forced to confront their treacherous folly and culpability in serving as the Democrats' winter soldiers, as it were, by guaranteeing a third Clinton-Obama term and pulling the plug on the old American Republic. That is on the heads of each and every one of you Trump supporters. And you Never Hillary people who are enabling them. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Doug. I'm talking to you, Alex. I mean, if anything can accomplish that, imparting and forcing that lesson, forcing them to acknowledge that they were wrong to support Trump in the first place, it's a straight-up, one-on-one, landslide, no excuses, no legitimate excuses, Trump defeat. But the chances of Trumplican repentance, even in that likely scenario, are frankly dubious. Resuming the Omaha.com quote, or as Peyton Manning used to say, Omaha! Omaha! The delegates also went one step further in making clear they were lining up behind Trump. They roundly rejected a counter-resolution that sought to condemn the presumptive GOP presidential nominee for making degrading comments toward women and minorities. The resolution was submitted by people who opposed the earlier resolution. One Republican said it was not their place to be the thought police in this presidential election. Close quote. That one Republican who now sounds an awful lot like a Democrat. By the way, here's the text of that defeated counter-resolution. Quote, be it resolved that the Nebraska Republican Party strongly opposes all degrading remarks toward women, minorities, and other individuals. So it wasn't limited to women and minorities. You could call this the don't be an asshole resolution. By Republican elected office holders or party officials, including candidates for President of the United States, because such rhetoric tarnishes the GOP's legacy as the party of Lincoln, alienates millions of Americans, and jeopardizes Republican majorities in the Nebraska legislature, the United States House of Representatives, and the United States Senate. Close quote. Don't think of that as political correctness. Think of it as common human decency, or good manners, or not being an asshole. Now, at any other time, such a resolution would have passed by unanimous voice vote. This shouldn't be anything that requires debate. But then, in no previous instance would such a resolution have even been necessary. And by defeating it, the Nebraska Republican Party literally said that it strongly supports all degrading remarks toward women, minorities, and other individuals by Republican elected office holders and party officials, including candidates for President of the United States, especially candidates for President of the United States, because such rhetoric tarnishes the GOP's legacy as the party of Lincoln, alienates millions of Americans, and jeopardizes Republican majorities in the Nebraska legislature, the United States House of Representatives, and the United States Senate. In other words, by rejecting this resolution, the Nebraska Republican Party is saying it supports all degrading remarks toward women, minorities, and other individuals. It supports tarnishing the GOP's legacy as the party of Lincoln. It supports alienating millions of Americans. And it supports forfeiting Republican majorities in the Nebraska legislature, the United States House of Representatives, and the United States Senate. Sounds like a political suicide note, doesn't it? Also, sounds like it could have been written by the Democrat National Committee itself if, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was, literate. There will no doubt be many more such airport battles over the next 6 months, most particularly the Cleveland Convention in July. But the final Siberia battle will come, to continue the Captain America 3 Civil War analogy. And appropriately enough, will come this winter, amidst the ashes and ruins of what was once the grand old party. The difference being that, unlike Iron Man, we will not stop and say, stay down, final warning. We will finish the job. Think of it as tough love. Well, this is something you don't see every day. It's a headline you don't see every day. Cancer patient receives first American penis transplant. That's right. Addictomies are real, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, well, I don't know. They reattached John Wayne Bobbitt's member once upon a time, like 20 years ago or more. So I suppose darn near anything is possible in the world of modern medicine. Still, I've never seen that particular box on any organ donor form I've ever seen. Anyway, New York Times provides the quote, "A cancer patient has received the first penis transplant in the United States," a Boston hospital said on Monday. Massachusetts General Hospital has confirmed that Thomas Manning of Halifax, Massachusetts, received the transplanted penis in a 15-hour procedure last week. So he wasn't using a staple gun, obviously. The organ was transplanted from a deceased donor, who apparently had no more use for it. Dr. Curtis Citrullo, who helped lead the surgical team, tells the newspaper that normal urination should be possible for the 64-year-old Manning in a few weeks, but sexual function possible in weeks to months. Well, that's going to be... that is going to be quite an occasion for him, is it not? He might even take a Viagra for the occasion. The Times reports most of Manning's original penis, was removed during his battle with penile cancer? Close quote. Penile cancer? Oh! Oh! That's got to be the most horrifying two-word combination in the English language. I don't even want to know what that's or how that's contracted either. Mr. Manning is the third such transplantee, just for the record, the first one in the United States. The first was a Chinese man 11 years ago who reportedly had himself recastrated 2 weeks later due to, in his words, psychological problems experienced by him and his wife. Which I interpret to mean that his wife was berating him for not having ordered a bigger one. The second man was a South African individual a year and a half ago at the University of Stellenbosch, whose procedure was necessitated by his original little buddy having had to be whacked due to complications from a, and I quote, botched circumcision in his late teens. Ooh, that's smarts! The story doesn't say if he got back his full function. Wouldn't it be funny if... should I even say this? It doesn't... The ethnicity of the South African man isn't mentioned, so I have no idea. But if it was a white guy... No, I'm not going there. I'll just say this. Oy vey. Here's hoping Mr. Manning's new flagpole is salutable in the very near future. And then he washes his hands before accepting handshakes of congratulations. Oh boy, penile cancer. That's a term I'm never going to shake from my cerebellum. Well, it has been redundantly confirmed. Welcome to Bill Clinton's third term. Remember a couple of weeks ago when Hillary Clinton announced that her husband, the Big Me, the 42nd President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton, was going to be her jobs czar. Remember that? The Blue Plate Special is coming back in the form of President Rodham and the First Gentleman being appointed job czar in her upcoming administration. It appears that the big me has already gotten a promotion and that his new expanded role, distended role, in the third Clinton term will be revitalizer of the entire U.S. economy. Wow, what form could that possibly take? Well, the Hill.com has a quote. Democrat frontrunner Hillary Clinton is beginning to hint, she began 2 weeks ago, this is building upon it, at what role her husband, former President Bill Clinton, could have in her administration if elected president. At a campaign stop in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, Mrs. Clinton said her husband would be in charge of revitalizing the economy. Mrs. Clinton often boasts about her husband's economic record on the economic trail, leaning heavily on Newt Gingrich's and Trent Lott's record of facilitating raising wages and job creation. The economy does better when you have a Democrat in the White House. What the hell? She said that last October 13th, I think. Jesus. Well, first of all, yeah, I know. First ladies, first gentlemen, whatever, this not an official job. It's not subject to Senate confirmation. It's not they're not accountable to anybody for anything. Or I lived through the 90s. I remember it. I still remember it was a Wall Street Journal editorial. I forget who wrote it, but it addressed exactly this topic, that we didn't have one president, we have one and a half. You know, the co-presidency and all that stuff. And Hillary Clinton being put in charge of health care reform when she hadn't been elected to anything. But that was before the advent of czars in the Obama regime. And so, is this unusual? I mean, it's not unusual even in the current Obama context. Bill Clinton would just be a czar, right? We've had those, still do, as a matter of fact. And of course, in the Clinton era context, well, it's just switching places. You know, nothing new about that. So, I mean, is it right? No, obviously not. Is it constitutional? No, it's not. Bill Clinton isn't being elected to do anything. It would be Hillary Clinton who was getting elected and will be elected, thanks to Trumplicans. But that's the world we live in, man. It's not right. Of course, it's not right, but that's the way it is. I feel like I'm wasting my time even reiterating this. It just is what it is. But what interests me is, doesn't the very fact of Hillary Clinton touting her husband as being the economy czar in her upcoming regime kind of beg the question of why Mr. Bill is needed to revitalize an economy that has been in Barack Obama's cloven clutches for the past 7.5 years? I mean, if the economy does better when you have a Democrat in the White House, we've had a Democrat in the White House for almost 2 terms. Why do we need Why does it need revitalizing? Oops. But it'll never be pointed out by the media. I mean, to say nothing of why Mr. Bill would take that role, given that it has failure scapegoat written all over it. I guess the new generation of millennial interns is just too gosh darn hot for him to resist it. Mrs. Clinton said something similar at a campaign event in early May, saying that she would bring him out of retirement to create jobs, like we alluded to earlier. Now, it'll create jobs for lawyers, late-night comics, true conservative bloggers like yours truly, and my podcasters too, like yours truly, and gossip columnists, perhaps. Like I said the other day, blog fodder gold mine. But like I also said a fortnight ago, the only job with which the Empress is truly concerned is the one she's pursuing for herself. Because this isn't about jobs or the economy, but all about making Sick Willie as much of the public face of her campaign as she possibly can. Like it or don't like it, and I'm in the latter category, but Bill Clinton is still the most popular living former president of the United States. His presidency is looked on as the last golden age in our country's history, thanks to his glomming the credit for the accomplishments of the Gingrich Revolution. And he is the greatest political tactician in American political history. The one caveat is that savantish political tactical wizardry is only effective for his own candidacy and has never translated to anybody for whom he's ever campaigned, except maybe Barack Obama 4 years ago, but I don't think Mr. Bill can be credited with that one. But it might work for the Empress, not unlike announcing a running mate early, especially given the gift 40% of Republican voters gave to her. As it is, Hillary Clinton is moderately less roaringly unpopular than Donald Trump. Add Bill Clinton's lingering popularity to her side of the electoral ledger, and by promising in advance to give him a prominent role in her regime, kind of the reverse of how he turned over healthcare reform to her, only not hiding it until after the election, and that could make her unbeatable. At least against the most despised major party candidate in modern American political history. And remember, the ugly Duchess will have 4 years to throw floor lamps at Sick Willie and listen to the moaning and groaning wafting down to the Oval Office from the second floor residence and the Warren G. Harding Memorial Whoopee Nook. Right now, she wants and needs to do whatever it takes to win the election that will put her there, and she is recognizing her greatest campaign asset and deploying him accordingly. That's way more of a game changer than effectively arguing that Bill and Trump should have double dated more. Oh, we might get the whole stack done here in hour number 3. No, this would be perhaps the third palate cleanser of the afternoon. But the Obamagon is, for whatever reason, confused on policy allowing sexually confused soldiers. Now, they rammed through gays in the military, and they've rammed through everything else. But are the United States Armed Forces collapsing into a full-blown identity crisis? Now, in any relevant, meaningful sense, no, they're not. They know that they're screwed and they can't defend the country anymore thanks to Barack Obama. But in the subject matter at hand, it's likely stumbled upon the SpongeBob SquarePants orb of confusion. You know, not so fast, arch-villain! We still have the orb of confusion! Click. And are now bollocksed about how to go about sexually confusing the ranks of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. Or could it be cold feet? Quote from the Washington Post. The Obamagon is 4 months past one deadline and looking at months more to agree on how to move forward with new policies aimed at allowing gender impersonators to openly serve. Disagreements still exist within the Defense Commissariat about how to proceed. If there was consensus on it, yeah, we would have done it, Peter Levine told the Washington Post. But obviously there are different views from different officials in the services. Levine, the Obamagon's acting personnel chief, said the goal is to get it done in this administration, meaning Barack Obama's second term, which puts Defense Commissar Ashton Carter on the clock. Ass Carter. Waiting in the balance are an estimated 12,800 gender impersonators, according to the Palm Center, an independent think tank. Shouldn't they all be put in one unit? What would you call that anyway? You can't call it the first all-star Amazon battalion. I'm not. What would you call that? I have no idea what you'd call that division. The gang that couldn't shoot straight? I don't know. But let's just zero in on that word disagreements. How can there be disagreements about this? I mean, I thought we are all transgender now, or else! And besides, this is the military we're talking about. It's not a democracy, it's an autocracy. Those in charge say jump, and those under their command say how high. If the Americas, gotta fix that typo, ladies and gentlemen. So hold on a minute while I fix this, and it won't take long. Hope it won't take long. Okay. If America's men and women in uniform are to become America's men, women, agenders, androgynes, androgynous, bigender, cisgender, cis-female, cis-male, cis-men, cis-women, cisgender females, cisgender males, cisgender men, cisgender women, females to males, FTMs, gender fluids, gender nonconformers, gender questioners, gender variants, gender queers, intersex males to females, MTFs, neithers, neutra, non-binaries, other pangenders, trans asterisk, trans females, trans asterisk females, trans males, trans asterisk males, trans men, trans asterisk men, trans persons, trans asterisk persons, trans women, trans asterisk women, trans feminines, transgenders, transgender females, transgender males, transgender men, transgender persons, transgender women, trans masculines, transsexuals, transsexual females, transsexual males, transsexual men, transsexual persons, transsexual women, and two spirits, collectively known as freaks, in uniform or out, as the case may be. This should be a simple matter of issue the necessary orders and ramming it through, right? Sounds like old ass has the makings of a mutiny on his hands. And judging from the implementation details, one can certainly understand why. Resuming the quote from the Washington Post, one major issue among many at the center of disagreement between military branches is how long should a Jeez. How did I miss that? How did I miss that, my friends? I don't know. How long should a gender impersonator wait post-transition before being allowed to join the military? The Army and Marine Corps advocate 24 months, while the Navy and Air Force thought 12 months was sufficient, according to the Post. Close quote. Man, there are civil wars going on everywhere you look, aren't there? Remember when the military was about two things and two things only? Killing people and breaking things? Good times, my friend. Good times. Now it's about crap like this. Healthcare is also an issue for gender impersonators. For example, the Obamagon does not currently cover hormone treatment for persons wanting to sexually mutilate themselves, according to the Post. End of quote. Not exactly Saving Private Ryan or Top Gun, is it? Meanwhile, you know where a lone warrior has stood up and taken a suicidally bold stand for genetics, science, and common sense? The heart of academia itself, ladies and gentlemen. This comes from Trumpbart. A tweet by a Princeton professor has questioned the very idea of transgenderism, dismissing it as superstition without any basis in fact. Robert P. George, the McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence at Princeton, wrote on Twitter, quote, "There are few superstitious beliefs as absurd as the idea that a woman can be trapped in a man's body and vice versa. But in the age of feeling, ... Actually, Professor George is not alone. The American College of Pediatricians has issued a statement that children who consider themselves a different gender than they are have a mental disorder called gender dysphoria and should not be treated as if they are making a healthy decision, as the Obama ruling insists. Conditioning children into believing that a lifetime of chemical and surgical mutilation to impersonate the opposite sex is normal and healthful is... Let me start that again. Conditioning children into believing that a lifetime of chemical and surgical impersonation of the opposite sex is normal and healthful is child abuse. Child abuse, the doctor stated. Endorsing gender discordance as normal via public education and legal policies will confuse children and parents, leading more... Well, parents should not be able to be confused by that. Leading more children to present to gender clinics where they will be given puberty-blocking drugs. The American College of Pediatricians statement made clear that a person's belief that he or she is something they are not is at best a sign of confused thinking. When an otherwise healthy biological boy believes he's a girl, or an otherwise healthy biological girl believes she's a boy, an objective psychological problem exists that lies in the mind and not the body, and it should be treated as such. Close quote. Thank you, cruel, horrible, bigoted monsters. I am proud and grateful to stand with you in this, our shared fight for sanity, silence, and reality. Which will be short and brutal, of course, leaving us all looking like queerless leader. But sometimes virtue really is its own reward, because it's the only reward we're ever going to get before the mandatory transitional process begins. Oh boy, I didn't know that there were that many photoshopped pics of Barack Obama in drag, actually. That's kind of interesting. I think I may just be able to squeeze this one in, but we shall see here in a moment. Get everything ready to go on the technical direction end of this. Behold the Trump scam civil war, ladies and gentlemen. Or, when your front runner is a scam artist, ... Now this is much less the super cafe and much more the villain's pub. Indeed, Trump mania has bred so much corruption, con artistry, scamming, and flim-flammery that even Trump world can neither control it beyond or even within its own confines. Now let's take the beyond first, shall we? From the Politico.com comes this quote: as Donald Trump rushes to start collecting the $1 billion expected to be necessary to compete for the White House, one of his biggest challenges may come from those claiming to support him. Oh, I'm sure they do support him. Scumbags of a feather flock together and all that. An increasing number of unauthorized groups are invoking the presumptive GOP nominee's name to raise money, suggesting that they'll use the cash to support his campaign, even as some appear to be spending most of their money on contracts with favored consultants. Which is pretty much the pattern of Trump's entire business career. Anybody know, by the way, if the pittance of all cash he claimed to be raising for America... boy, this is... I might not get through this. No, that's not right. Gosh darn it. By the way, if a pittance of all the cash. Alright, that's better. Anybody know, by the way, if the pittance of all the cash he claimed to be raising for America's veterans has actually gotten to them yet? You might want to check in on that, get an update. Trump's campaign and its allies worry that the groups are doing little to help the campaign and maybe doing more harm than good by siphoning off cash that would otherwise go to the campaign's fledgling fundraising effort. Which wouldn't be a problem if he had kept his word on his original promise to self-fund his efforts. Something he'd surely be able to do if he's as rich and successful as he claims to be. And which he quite evidently is not, given his refusal to release any of his tax returns. The campaign has disavowed several of the groups, demanding they stop using the candidate's name in fundraising appeals and calling at least one super PAC founded by a Trump advisor a big league scam. But appeals keep coming from other groups, with more now joining the scrum and rival groups accusing one another of being scams. Yeah, well, Trump is their Yoda, so they and he would know. The thing is, the closer you get to Trump world itself, the more egregious the scams become. Great America PAC has spent more than $1 million so far on pro-Trump ads, but raised eyebrows with a TV spot that looked unprofessional and asked supporters to call a toll-free number to donate. One of its strategists, Jesse Benton, was convicted this month of buying an endorsement for Ron Paul in 2012. And Amy Creamer, a Tea Party activist who was an early leader of the group, quit this month over a disagreement with Beach. The PAC's treasurer is Dan Backer, whose consulting firm, DB Capital Strategies, has been paid more than $2,000. Backer is also the treasurer of PACs such as Conservative Action Fund and Tea Party Forward that have spent more on their own operating expenses than on their stated causes. The Great America PAC has been one of the top pro-Trump PACs out there up until now. Guess what Trump convention rioting coordinator Roger the Fixer Stone thinks of them? Quote, longtime Trump ally Roger Stone has warned donors to beware of Great America PAC, branding it a scam. Okay. But now guess what Corey Lewandowski thinks of Roger Stone's convention rioting coordination fundraising efforts. Quote from thehill.com. Big league scam. Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski told The Hill. We sent a cease and desist letter to this PAC in October and want nothing more to do with this, he said. These guys are scam artists doing it for their own personal benefit and seeking to profiteer off Trump's name. People should not give to this or any other super PAC claiming to support Donald Trump for president. Wow. None of this cross-finger pointing is a search for virtue and ethics and integrity. Rather, every last one of them is a grifter, just like their standard bearer, and they're all in a huge brawl to claw their way to the top of the Trump pecking order. Kind of like swindler Darwinism or Charles Xavier's description of the future Sentinel-dominated world, leaving only the worst of humanity in charge. That sure as Shinola describes Trump world, all right. And this is what the Republican Party is going to be after Trump mania is finally put out of its misery 6 months from now. A dirty, smelly, rancid, barf-stained, gutted shell of what it once was, with its crazed, angry, aggrieved, corrupt defenders standing outside of it ready to fight to the death to keep it in that very decimated condition. Or maybe they'll all be in such a huge brawl with each other to claw their way to the top of the post-Trump pecking order. And grab the biggest, dirty, smelly, barf-stained, odoriferous spot for themselves. Heck, if it gets heated enough, they may not even notice the election itself, and perhaps conservatives can take back the party unopposed and start anew. Hey, it'll be worth a try anyway. See you tomorrow, folks.